Harry, before we get to the waving around of the documents, for those who have not read your column, you are already making a verdict prediction. You wrote that Trump's team did not provide a story compelling enough to leave jurors with reasonable doubt. But Harry, how does that square with the prosecution's obligation now?
Yeah, it's really well taken. It only takes one to make a hung jury. You have, beyond a reasonable doubt, highest standard in the law. But in my experience, Alex, what really matters to a jury is a comparison of stories. I think it won't be enough to say, did Cohen lie on one or more occasions, which by the way, I think there's no real strong proof of. I think he held up very well. But in general, I think they'll make a relative judgment who's lying and who's telling the truth. And Trump, by the way, took on much more than he needed to, including saying he never had sex with Stormy Daniels. And when you compare them up in the jury room, I think the prosecution story hangs together very well across many different witnesses and evidence. And the defense story it's not clear. Something like some of the witnesses shouldn't be believed, but there's no really narrative plot line to kind of hang on to unless they pull something out of the hat on Tuesday, but I can't see what it would be. There is a tricky legal issue embedded, which maybe we'll get to, but just on the basic level of whom the jury believes and do they have a reason for a reasonable doubt, I think the prosecution is, it's theirs to lose.
So we have this defense, Suzanne. They're going to go first in the closing arguments. Did Todd Blanche's really fiery exploration of Cohen's lies, do you think that had a lasting impact on the jury? And could Cohen's history be disqualifying enough to create the doubt that Trump needs?
Interesting, because, some of this does hang on the believability of Michael Cohen and whether the jury can at least believe some of what he said. I thought when I think back to Michael Cohen, I think two things. I think he did a good job not losing his temper. He was a great witness for the government. So I kind of think what we just thought coming in, I remember Cy Vance in an interview before the trial started. He's the former prosecutor in Manhattan. He had said he thought he was a hand grenade, I think were the words that he used. And, they decided not to bring the case. I thought Cohen was really good, but I do think Donald Trump's attorneys, Todd Blanche, he handled the cross-examination, that he did land some punches. I think they could be effective. I think they've probably, if you didn't know Michael Cohen was a liar and a cheat, and he's admitted to these things before, now, and a lot of details about it. I think that when I think about the mistake that was made, though, I thought Todd Blanche did a pretty good job, but then Donald Trump's lawyers decided, instead of just letting it rest and saying we're not going to mount a defense, they called two witnesses, primarily one that I think sort of backfired on them, and that was Bob Costello. Without getting into the lot of the details about that, what I remember about it and what the jury probably remembers is how disrespectful he was to the judge, to the point where the judge went and cleared the courtroom. So I'm sort of wondering how, I think when I think back to Michael Cohen, I think he did I thought a pretty good job. They landed some punches, but what I'm left with is thinking, wow, Bob Costello, what was that all about? And why did they call him when they didn't have to call him? And I think it backfired on.
And that's maybe a concern, since they've had that to percolate on for the last 7 days, frankly, or it will be 7 days on Tuesday. So Harry, Trump on social media overnight, he made references to a legal expense to a lawyer. Does this tell you how his defense team plans to tell the jury that this was all just a legal expense? I'm going to ask, is the case that simple?
Not only isn't it that simple, there's no, he at this point, they put it all together, but they have to anchor it in the evidence that the jury has heard. And what the jury has heard is exactly the opposite. They've heard that Trump told Hope Hicks, an unimpeachable witness, that this was a reimbursement based on the expense, the $130,000 payment. They heard essentially the same from David Pecker, essentially the same in the handwriting anyway from Alan Weisselberg. So you can't just get up and in Trumpian fashion, make up a tall tale. It's got to be anchored in the evidence. That evidence is not there. And another piece of evidence that isn't there that could have been their story, I think, is this was all done for Melania's sake. That I think has been pretty well foreclosed by the evidence, not to mention her not being in court the whole time. So, as always, lawyers have to play by different rules than Trump, but Trump forces the decisions on them. And in almost every case, like what Suzanne's just talking about with the calling of Costello, it has backfired spectacularly when they've been forced to play by his decisions.
Let's talk, Suzanne, about Trump outside the court with those stacks of paper. You've covered him for a long time. Why do you think he's doing this? What's it all about?
Well, I have to say he loves news clippings. He sends them famously to people. He'll see an article he likes and he'll get his black Sharpie out and he will write something on it and send it to somebody, either friend or foe. But I've talked to people over the decades who have gotten a news clipping from him signed. And I think this is an extension of that. It's a visual aid. He's outside of the courtroom. He's holding court and he's got analysis, news articles in front of him that sort of do his talking for him, and he'll read. They're usually conservative commentators that are saying something favorable to him. And I think he's flashing them around just as a great visual aid.
Do you think it's just marketing, Harry, or is there something legal, a legal aspect to it all?
Yeah, no legal aspect. As always, he lives in his little silo. Again, going back to Bob Costello. Who was he to Trump? One of the small few people who are 100% for him. In the same way, he's got this 32-year-old aide who feeds him these papers, anything good about Trump. And then he, stands up and tries to counter the narrative that's been in trial when he gets out there. And, he did this, remember, in Mar-a-Lago, picking up a piece of paper that happened to be classified and about Iran. He likes to, it's sort of his visual aspect of people are saying, a thing he loves to do, even if it's not. A lot of people are saying, that's what those papers are.
Okay. Last question to you, Suzanne. I've asked you for predictions before, and I recall you telling me you don't like making them, but do you have one for this verdict? Harry's gone on record, so I'm just saying. I know.
I'm glad you asked me this because I want to talk a little bit about the hung jury. It was interesting. I had a friend over this morning who, of course, knows I've been covering the trial, and she was on a jury. And I said, well, how did it go? And she said, well, I got to tell you, we got into the jury room and we talked for 2 days. And one of the jurors said, I'm just not going to change my mind. And my friend said, well, I'm not changing my mind. And it ended up in a hung jury. Right. And I thought it's really interesting because it doesn't happen very often. I've read 5% of the time. It could be lower. But you don't often think about hung juries because they are quite rare. But in this case, just given the nature of the case, you could see one juror just digging in. We don't know, but I sort of, a lot of people are talking about the hung jury, so I wanted to mention that. I'm not sure that that's where it's going to go. I think there was a lot of, evidence in this case that would lead reasonable minds to believe that there could be a guilty verdict, but we really don't know. But I'm sort of just intrigued on the hung jury, and I could see in this sort of case, and it's pretty rare that it may happen, or there's a higher than normal chance anyways.
I can't tell you how glad I am that I'm sitting down with you having said that, because there would obviously be a potential to retry this case if that happens. And I'm like,
right.
Come on. Anyway.
I know, but when you hear my friend, I thought my friend was pretty instructive just on, two people just dig in and that's it.
And it happens. You can see it. And if you say they deliberated for 2 days and then they finally said, we're not going to get anywhere past this. I mean, you have to just give it up at that point and say, it is what it is.
Yeah, and you think about just the human nature. Get 12 people to agree is hard.
No,
yeah, Harry, go ahead.
Especially these days. Yeah, last word, Harry.
Right.
Suzanne, of course, is right. But one thing that being in the courtroom lets you do is look at the jury, and generally you look for someone who seems to be separating themselves out sort of socially. I've looked hard for that person and haven't seen it. Not to say it won't happen. Always a risk in a trial, but I haven't seen that.
I'm not predicting it. I just wanted to sort of go there and have that discussion.
No, putting it out there, absolutely. Good discussion, which I always expect from both of you.
That's a lot of money.
There you go.
We have a side bet. Don't tell anybody.
Oh, God. God, I'm not in on it. Come on, you guys. Anyway, all right, Suzanne and Harry, thank you both so much.